Hi, welcome back to EWI Tuesday, and today I like to get into a feature of the EWI, especially using the EWI fingering. One will be able to play actually all the scales we need, all the scales we could do, without actually using these side keys, or say pinky keys or the finger keys on the side. And you could actually play chromatically over the whole instrument actually without using any of these side keys. Now, the advantage of that there will be actually some keys or some scales or types of scale what you're doing would actually be easier to play if by first learning those fingerings. But first, let's talk into actually what the side keys actually do. Now, of course, if you're playing saxophone, you're familiar actually with the use of those keys. Like if you know this is a G, that's a G sharp. But the thing is, these keys have a special function on the EWI that, for instance, on the left hand, the upper key always raises a note by half step, no matter what note you're playing. I could play a C here and raise it to a C sharp. B to C. So exactly, it doesn't matter what key I'm using, what note I'm playing. Even when I'm playing D, I could play D sharp actually up here, not only down here. Of course, here on the right hand side, the upper key here, the upper side key here has the exact same function. Also raises any note, not by half step. My G to G sharp, or I could play an F to an F sharp trill that way if I wish, or at any case. And on top of that, if I use both of these side keys in combination, whatever I'm playing, I can raise it all a whole step. So it's cumulative. So I'm playing here G, but also using both side keys, and actually turns it into an A. Now, for the same token, similar, the bottom key here, the lower key here, will change any note down a half step. So my G will become an F sharp. Same function here at the second key at the bottom. Would also lower the note a half step, and also combined would also make it cumulative. We'll lower that note a whole step. The bottom key here on the side, whatever note you're playing, will lower it a whole step. So we'll lower it a whole step no matter what note you're playing. And on that note, if I decide to use the lower key on the left hand side and also press the lowest key here, then also I get a whole step plus another half step lower. So actually I'll be able to play a minor third interval that way. Why would I use these alternatives instead of playing the note themselves? Like I said, it all depends on what the musical situation is. It's just here you'll have that flexibility to actually to play the notes differently. But depending on the musical situation, what melody you have, how it's fingered, whatever the situation, you have these options. Getting back to the scales now, if you're a saxophone player, you may, if you have some experience with the EWI, you may be using saxophone fingering on it, which is of course fine. I have my EWI set up that I use the EWI standard fingering, and of course all saxophone fingerings work and this EWI standard fingering as well. But then I also have the possibility of using other fingering. Now, as I said, if you're a saxophone player who also have some familiarity with the EWI, I say in the EWI standard fingering, the scales for C major, D major, F major, and G major will be exactly the same as you know them on saxophone. It's not any different. B flat major you could also add to that list, but then there are different ways that you could play the B flat. There are different ways you could play the E flat on there. So I'd say that as a kind of a special exception of being the same fingering. Of course, you could use exactly the same fingering as you know in saxophone, but then you'll have other possibilities. So let's first get into a couple of those differences. A couple of fingers that are possible on the EWI that are just mainly are not known on the saxophone, or not possible on the saxophone, which will be something that you'll have to learn to do on the EWI. Now, as far as let me just say a caveat. As far as practicing scales on the EWI, of course, you could do them just a traditional way of going through, all keys, going through certain melodies, patterns, and whatnot. I would like to suggest one of the faster ways to really get to learn the instrument is actually go directly to those scales or those parts of a scale which you're totally unfamiliar with as far as a saxophone playing. Like for instance, I have on the EWI, if I'm going to play, just talking before about the B flat major scale, of course I can play the B flat, like what might be in the bis key, Now here I have my EWI tuned to just C fingering, just for a moment, but then I could change it to B flat, I could change it to E flat finger, but E flat, so transposition. But I decided to keep it at C transposition for this video. And so so B flat major scale. So as one would know it on saxophone. I could also play it like this. Now, notice my C, I'm actually playing with the right hand with the first fingering. I have that possibility with the EWI, which I wouldn't have with the saxophone. I could play, of course, 1 and 1. This is also known saxophone fingering. Not often used, but it's basically a standard fingering for saxophone. I could, from this position, just a side note, like if I wanted to do a trill from B flat to B or like A sharp to B, I have the possibility to do that, but if I want to play a trill from B flat to C, I have that possibility just by trilling my index finger on the left hand in order to get that C. But continuing on, B flat major scale. Here's something different. Here I have the possibility to play E flat as 1, 2, 3, 1, 3. On the EWI, which again is not known on saxophone. This is something that you can't do on saxophone, to play an E flat. It wouldn't work. So it wouldn't work. So then I have. So if I want to first approach learning to use this E flat at first, I would just concentrate on just a small part of the scale that actually has that at first. So. So here I'm just concentrating on the first 5 notes of the B flat major scale in order just to practice that E flat fingering. Of course, I can do this various different ways. I can decide to say, okay, I pick a certain range. Like for instance, this is also happens to be over the break of the instrument, going from C to D. I could just decide to just play a series of just say, keep all my tones between C and G. So, and now just keep adding a chromatic note in order to learn it this way. So like I'll play first normal C, D, E, F, G. And then I'll add an E flat in there. Then I'll add D flat. Then I'll add G flat. So that way I consequently using this new E flat fingering that possibly I did not know before. So there's a way to learn it. Same here, the next possibility there, if I'm decide to go to the E flat major scale, here I have the possibility of playing E flat, not only regularly like saxophone, like I would on saxophone, but also have the possibility to playing E flat as is 1, 2, and 1. Also, I could also do is 1, 2, and 2. Now, again, there are certain situations where that might be more advantageous for me to play A flat like this and than in other situations. But in any case, in the E flat major scale, and then here I could play from A flat to B flat. Looks like A to B, like I would normally play in a scale, but then because I'm holding down the first finger in the right hand side, it lowers both of these notes down a half step. This is something also a feature of the EWI fingering, is that you could also lower notes a half step also by combining it with like let's say the notes you play in your left hand, you can also lower them down a half step by adding a finger on the right hand side. And so I here also have A flat, B flat, C. Again, see here. Now if I decide if I want to play something, but first finishing up the E flat major scale. Same here, I could do it A flat. Now, of course, this is unusual or maybe even cumbersome to play G flat, to play G to A flat this way. But again, this is something that one does not have to strictly adhere to. This is something you could learn. This is something you could decide that, they'll never be useful for me and then I'll don't learn it. Or maybe you just want to expand your technique and just learn some fingerings that you normally would never have the opportunity to use on any other instrument. But it's something that's very EWI specific. So moving on, for instance, D flat major scale. Here you might notice that I have my F, and then after my G flat, and then there I'm just opening up my left hand for G flat, A flat, B flat, C. Again, I could also play C with just the middle finger of my right hand. So this is a possibility to play a D flat major scale. In fact, if you compare it with playing saxophone, playing D flat major scale on the EWI is a lot easier than actually you would do it on saxophone. And you could play the whole range this way, of course with the exception if you want to really go down to play the lowest, of course to get that D flat, you'll have to use the side keys, but above all that, you don't have to use those side keys ever again. So this way, you have an opportunity, again, to play the instrument chromatically, all chromatic keys, without having to use the side keys. Moving on, G flat becomes, or F sharp, becomes exactly as easier than saxophone. Again, there you have possibilities. Again, I'm fingering my left hand as though I'm just playing part of a G scale, just the first three notes, but because I'm holding down one key, let's see, the first one or the second one, but I say in this case the second key here on my right hand, it lowers those three notes down a half step. Start with the A major scale. As a saxophonist, with EWI fingering. Again, I could play G sharp with less than A and just having one finger, my middle finger here, put down on the right hand side to lower that note a half step. And I'm using that one because then I could play from F sharp to G sharp by raising my ring finger on the left hand rather than using a combination as I would do in saxophone, switching from F sharp to G sharp. Now again, if you're not familiar with all this at the beginning, it'll be first unusual, but I'd say, of course, with anything with regular practice, the fingerings are actually easy to learn, and you'll get to actually master them a lot quicker than you may realize. E major scale. Here I'm playing D sharp to E this way. Now, this might be for some people pretty complicated or unnecessary, but believe it or not, I decided to try to do it this way. Play this because actually in the flute we often play F to F sharp this way, and why not try also a way to do it to play the finger this way too, especially we're playing on flute like E to F sharp oftentimes, not as a trill, but like in the scale. So here's a possibility to also play D sharp to E. But anyway, and of course, that also said for the B major scale. Of course, the coordination between your left and your right hands will have to be worked on, but simply enough, you'll be able to go through them. Let's get to some other scales, like, for instance, symmetrical scales. Let's get to whole tone scales. For instance, now, whole tone scales, there are actually only 2 of them. And even on the saxophone, they're quite easy to finger, but on the EWI, they even get even easier because, like I said, since there aren't any side keys to play the high notes or high notes, you could actually use the same fingering throughout the entirety of the instrument. A C whole tone scale. Now from this point, from the F sharp, C, D, E, F sharp, and then from here, because of the possibility I could combine, or like I say, I could play a note on my left hand and lower it with my right hand, I could play after that F sharp, a G sharp like this, and then a B flat as well like this, and also on C. So then at the end of it, my middle finger on the right hand becomes an anchor. I could keep my fingering in this position the whole time, my middle finger on the right hand, and play freely within this scale and don't even have to think about it. All the notes will be correct. I could play that entire scale holding my middle finger on the right hand down, and I won't have to think about the other fingerings anymore. My whole tone scale will always be correct. Of course, the easier whole tone scale, the other one from D flat or E flat. No, in saxophone is easy enough. To play that same, but on the EWI, of course, the only difference is that E flat, you can play the E flat as a saxophonist or the E flat as the EWI, and all other fingerings are exactly the same as you would play it on saxophone. So there, again, just keeping a certain hand position, and you'll be able to play that entire scale without any problem. That's all for this week's EWI Tuesday. And I hope to see you next week. Next week, I'm going to be delving into chromatic shifting for improvisation on the EWI. And we'll get into actually what I mean by that, about how you can easily use these side key functions on the EWI in order to change the transposition of your improvisational lines. And I'll have a couple of lines as suggestions of what you could do. But anyway, press that like button, subscribe, and also press on that notification bell. in order to also be notified from the next time I come out with another video here on my channel. And if you have any comments, suggestions, anything, please write them below in the comments section, and I read everything, and I hope to hear from you soon. Till then, take care.